The reports that at some point you were interested in becoming a part of the Miami Dolphins in any situation, in any circumstance. Any truth to those reports, Tom?
About me going to
joining the Dolphins in any capacity.
2 months ago, we made this video on how Tom Brady having this terrifying plan to leave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and join the Miami Dolphins. And originally, this is something we just took as a rumor, but honestly, as time passed on, there were little hints that implied that Tom Brady's plan A was to ideally get himself on the Miami Dolphins. Now, we just got words from Tom Brady's mouth that not only validates this, but in addition to validating it, we also got a crazy contract offer that was supposed to be made to Sean Payton that would have shattered any other head coach's contract in NFL history. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. You can also get exclusive content on my Patreon. We just made a brand new documentary on the dysfunction of the Raiders franchise on patreon.com/microphone. And now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? It's good to be back. 5 months ago, well, roughly about 5 months ago, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took on the Los Angeles Rams in one of the most heated NFC divisional games that we've seen. I mean, if you go back to this past year's NFL playoffs, a lot of the games were really freaking close. But this one in particular had a bunch of storylines. On the Tampa Bay Buccaneers side of things, you had Tom Brady in his age 44 season, and it seemed like this season stuck out a little bit more than his previous Buccaneers season. I mean, the previous Buccaneers season, he announced that he's joining the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, brought Rob Gronkowski with him. Next thing you know, a bunch of players are trying to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to team up with Tom Brady, whether that's Leonard Fournette or later on in the season, Antonio Brown. A culture was being built for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and things went really well for year one. But in year two, especially in this divisional playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams, Tom Brady was having significantly more difficulty. He was just a few weeks removed from the best wide receiver of the 2010s, or at least one of the best wide receivers of the 2010s, taking off his jersey in the middle of a game and walking out on his team. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have his reasons. We made plenty videos on that. But in addition to this, Tom Brady was also dealing with Chris Godwin tearing his ACL. So for the most part, this game was the epitome of Tom Brady's struggle over the past year. He was trying to drag and carry the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a victory against the Los Angeles Rams. And to his credit, he was very close to doing so. This could have easily been the greatest comeback for Tom Brady since the Super Bowl versus the Atlanta Falcons when he came back from a 28-3 deficit. But what would end up happening is Matthew Stafford would close the game beautifully. Tom Brady looked absolutely exhausted in the post-game presser, and about a week later, he would announce his retirement. Following his retirement, there were rumors about what was going on in that window of time. The most popular rumor was suggesting that Tom Brady would not only be a potential player for the Miami Dolphins, but he would also potentially be the part owner of the Miami Dolphins. So he would get a share in the Miami Dolphins and the opportunity to play for the Dolphins. Now, this ties into a lot of things that we covered in the past. When Brian Flores sued the Miami Dolphins, there were a couple of points in the lawsuit that implied that not only were the Miami Dolphins a little sketchy in regards to how desperate they were to build a contender, which in their defense, if you look at this team's recent history, I don't necessarily blame them for wanting to tank for Joe Burrow or for setting up this very sketchy appointment that Brian Flores had an issue with, apparently. But if you didn't know, at the end of the 2019 season, the owner of the Miami Dolphins began pressuring Brian Flores to recruit a prominent quarterback in violation of league tampering rules. Now, Mr. Flores repeatedly refused to comply with these improper directives. Undeterred, in the winter of 2020, Mr. Mr. Ross invited Flores onto a yacht for lunch. Shortly after he arrived, Mr. Ross told Mr. Flores that the prominent quarterback was conveniently arriving at the marina. Now, if you also pay attention to some of the tweets that were going on back in that time, there's this one tweet where Brian Flores said that he agreed with the owner of the Miami Dolphins, Stephen Ross, on why would Tom Brady come to Miami. He reiterated several times that he's happy with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's important for the Dolphins to find a QB of the future, but it will likely come via the draft. Now, if you guys remember, there was a point where the Dolphins were all about tanking for Tua, and in Tua's defense, I think for the first 2 years of any career, he's put together a respectable body of work. Yes, he's not Patrick Mahomes, where he immediately came out and started throwing bombs all over the field, but according to Tyreek Hill, at the very minimum, he's more accurate than Patrick Mahomes.
But Tua actually has, probably one of the prettiest balls I've ever caught in my life. So
as far as accuracy wise, I'm going with Tua all day.
So this brings us to where we currently are. At the end, Tom Brady would come back from retirement just a day before free agency would start, and there was a gigantic shift in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' plans. Instead of seeing a bunch of free agents potentially leave their roster to pursue other teams, a large majority of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ended up coming back. Of course, there were some instances of retirements, and they ended up not bringing back Ndamukong Suh, and they made some different changes like adding Russell Gage, and the jury is still out on Rob Gronkowski, but eventually the Tampa Bay Buccaneers put together a respectable roster in order to compete this year. Great. So what about the Miami Dolphins? We know what would end up happening with the Dolphins. They would go absolutely berserk this offseason. I mean, trading for Tyreek Hill, signing Teron Armstead, firing Brian Flores, hiring Mike McDaniel. This was a very impressive offseason by any means, but it wasn't plan A. Could you believe that? So Tom Brady was asked point blank whether or not he had plans on joining the Dolphins, and this is what he had to say.
I mean, again, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, as I've had for the last 3 or 4 years in my career, about, different opportunities when I'm done playing with football. So, I kind of made a decision of what I'd like to do, and I'll get to be in the game of football. And I think for me, the most important thing is where I'm at now and, what I hope to do for this team. That's been my commitment to this team and organization. It's been so much fun for me to come here 2 years ago. It's been almost 2.5 years now, and it's been an incredible part of my football journey. And it's not over, and we still got a lot to accomplish. So I got a long life ahead, and there's a lot of fun things to do ahead. I'm looking forward to what's ahead in football, but at the same time, none of us are promised much beyond what we have now, and this is the current moment, and I'm really excited about going out there to try to compete and win a championship.
So let me get one thing straight here. In terms of any response you will ever get from a superstar point blank saying that they intended on leaving their team for another team, I think this is the closest you're going to get while that player is still on the same team. I mean, Tom Brady does a really good job trying to be transparent, saying, yeah, there were other opportunities there for me, without really going into unnecessary detail about it, which, what do you expect? Do you expect him to come out and say,
yeah, I was going to go play for the Miami Dolphins and be a part owner of the Miami Dolphins until the Tampa Bay Buccaneers screwed all that up?
Of course not. At this point, I am 100% convinced that this was going to be Tom Brady's plan. And maybe there's a world where this team was initially going to be built for Tom Brady instead of Tua. You might be wondering how they would be able to get that done. Well, the Miami Dolphins had a ton of cap space this past offseason, and Tom Brady is notorious for taking pay cuts. So there is an alternate reality out there where Tom Brady is throwing bombs to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But who is his head coach? Well, the head coach the Miami Dolphins were targeting at the time was Sean Payton. And according to Dove Kleinman, the contract that he was set to get was something that we've never seen before. Apparently, the Dolphins were ready to offer Sean Payton a $100 million deal over 5 years to coach the team. There's only been one other instance in NFL history where a head coach got such a contract, and it was John Gruden, who got $100 million over 10 years to ruin the Las Vegas Raiders. Oh no, that's not fair. Mike Mayock also helped ruin the Las Vegas Raiders. I just thought this was an interesting thing to point out, that Tom Brady's ideal situation was moving to another part of Florida, potentially running it for his final season in the NFL, and then signing as a part owner with the team and to be that team's part quarterback. I mean, it would be so interesting if Tua ends up, and I hope it does doesn't happen, but if Tua ends up not having the best season, and then Tom Brady ends up signing with the Dolphins because he's a free agent after this year, yeah, that goes past the age 45 limit that he set for himself a few years ago. But to play in your age 46 season and also be the part owner of that franchise, I don't know. That sounds like an opportunity that I can't see Tom passing up, or at the same time just going into an executive role, going into a front office role. I don't typically say this of legendary quarterbacks, but when you're Tom Brady and you have this competitive itch in you, I could see him eventually transitioning to somewhere in the front office. Very similarly to what Michael Jordan did once he retired from the NBA. He ended up buying the Charlotte Hornets and is notorious for making a decent amount of terrible front office decisions. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload. I think I returned to work way too soon, dude.